Greetings, friends and citizens of the world. This is Brother Bart's Conspiracy Corner News. I am Bart Sibrel of Sibrel.com. We've got a lot to cover today, so buckle up and get ready, because here we go. Let's take a look about what's going on in this sad, lost world of ours. I reported before that Tennessee, which has a balanced budget amendment and no state income tax, is ranked one of the highest for integrity in state government in the United States. So let's take a look at the COVID deaths that they have reported. 381, right there. Now, of course, this started around January. It was announced as a pandemic in March, but the virus allegedly started around January in America. So if you take that we're here at about 5 months behind us, you could round this up maybe to another 100 for half the year. And let's say that's about 800 deaths, or I'm sorry, let's even say it 500 deaths for half a year and 1,000 deaths per year. So in Tennessee, where reporting is honest, okay, there have been 381 deaths that have been allegedly of COVID or respiratory disease when the COVID thing is going around, and they labeled it COVID as a good guess, right? Okay, remember the average age of death is also 75 years old, with people always having pre-existing health problems. Now let's take a look at the year of deaths from automobile wrecks in Tennessee. This is from November of last year, meaning it's not even the entire year. And so far, in a normal year, last year being the, quote, normal year, 1,000 people and one have died in Tennessee crashes. Now, we estimated that about 1,000 people are dying a year in Tennessee from COVID. And if you add, because there's 1 month missing, another 100, then there's about 1,100 people who die a year from automobile wrecks. Okay, here's the number. So far, 381 in 5 months. We can round it up if you want very generously to 506 months and double that to 1,000, although the number's probably closer to 900 per year. And yet you have 1,000 plus 100 for the final month, 100 people dying from car crashes every year in Tennessee, which means you are more likely to die in a car crash than you are to get COVID. And yet, I don't see the government forbidding people to drive. I don't see everyone in a panic. Don't drive your car. You might get killed, right? They're locking down everybody, locking down the healthy instead of the sick. Normally, you quarantine the sick. This is the first time in world history that the healthy have ever been quarantined. Keep that in mind, okay? And well, I'll get to this next because I put it in sequence, even though my mind was going to jump ahead here. Okay, so in Ireland, and the number's only slightly better in the United States, where they fudged the numbers considerably to make it not look like a crisis, 1 in 16 boys has autism. 1 in 16 boys, right, has autism in Ireland, and the numbers aren't that much better in the United States. And let's go on and read down here what the effects of having autism are. It says the autism crisis dwarfs COVID-19. Bill Gates' Institute for Health Metrics predicts 81,000 deaths from COVID. The average death is 75. In contrast, autism attacks infants, pre-aging a lifetime of nightmarish agony. Half will never go on a date, write a poem, hit a baseball, join the military, pay taxes, cast a vote, run for office, speak, or even use a toilet. Their cost of care is over $250 billion, and this is annually. So every 4 years, autism costs $1 trillion, affects 1 out of 16 boys, okay? 1 out of 16. Now, if you put 7 million people in Tennessee divided by 381, you get a 1 in 18,000 chance of dying from COVID, and you're going to be 75 if that happens, right? And yet autism is affecting children, ruining their entire life. People dying from COVID, if the average age is 75, have lived a full life. But this is affecting so many more people, autism, and again, there's nothing done about it. No urgent plea, no continual news stories about it. More people are dying from automobile wrecks than COVID in Tennessee, and no one says anything about that you might die on the way to church, therefore we better close down the church, right? Which is where I wanted to jump ahead to, and we'll come back to. And then the World Health Organization slipped and said that every argument, it says, for mandatory vaccines or contact tracing, and dare I say, the international lockdown, by declaring asymptomatic carriers don't spread COVID. Now, what that means is a person who's not coughing, not sneezing, looks perfectly fine. They started this whole lockdown worldwide because they said asymptomatic people who don't have any symptoms, are spreading the virus. And now they say that's completely not the case. And that was the entire proposal for why having the lockdown. Let's go to the exact quote. From the data we have, it seems to be rare that an asymptomatic person actually transmit onward to a secondary individual. Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, head of the World Health Organization's Emerging Diseases and Zoonosis Unit, said at a news briefing from the United Nations Agency in Geneva headquarters, it is very rare, meaning you do not have to lock down and quarantine healthy people. You can tell who has COVID. They're coughing, they're sneezing, they have a fever, right? COVID is a real disease. They've got to have some cases of it to do this, but it's being blown dramatically out of proportion. The Russian equivalent of Dr. Fauci, if I'm saying his name wrong, who cares? No offense. The Russian version of him, right? It says it's just the flu with minimal mortality. Why has the world been destroyed because of it? That I do not know. Russia, the former communist enemy of America, who we called liars all the time, are now the truth tellers why the United States are liars. That's what has happened to our world. German officials, right? Leaks report. See, this one isn't even published. They're afraid to publish it because they're an ally of America. Coronavirus is a global false alarm. All of these articles will be linked in the description of this video. Northern Ireland head chief, he kept the best case COVID-19 scenario under wraps, a secret, and went public instead with one that was 12 times worse. Because obviously he was instructed to do so. And when you're at McDonald's and they say drop an order of fries and you say, no, I'm going to make hamburgers instead, they'll fire you. You do what you're told. That's what reporters on TV do. That's what public officials like this do. They do what they're told, even if it's immoral and not right. And look at this. A judge rules that Tennessee must let abortion clinics stay open, but churches must stay closed. Now, people, Seventh-day Adventists in particular, we preach the United States is the second beast power in Revelation. It's one of our doctrines, right? Then why are we submitting to the devil? If it's not clear that abortion clinics are left open and churches must stay closed, and liquor stores and gun shops are open for businesses, but churches are closed, why are U.S. governors trashing the First Amendment? You see here, this is not tissue, by the way. You see this picture here? You see the fingers, you see the face, you see the nose, you see the feet. This is a human being. It's not tissue, right? So, if abortion clinics are allowed to stay open and churches must be closed, liquor stores and gun shops are allowed to stay open, but churches are closed, don't you think those are satanic orders? And if you submit to them, you're submitting to Satan? Don't you think, especially when you preach that the second beast power of the United States of America the second beast power in Revelation 13 is the United States, and then you submit to satanic orders that close churches and leave liquor stores and abortion clinics open. Think about that. Here's an article about when churches say no to the government, and I wanted to read this first quote from it. There is precedent in Scripture for godly people saying no to the governing authorities. There are times when, to use the words of Peter, we must obey God rather than man or the beast power in Revelation. Right? One of the slogans of the American Revolution was, rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Now here is a sign. And my darling wife took a picture of this sign. It's on a country store here in Tennessee. And here's what it says. It says, Lewis Country Store Front Door Attention. Our freedom does not end where your fear begins. If you are scared, stay at home. You could say that. Churches could say that in a polite way to their parishioners. If you're scared, stay at home. We're going to open up for everybody else. The Bible says do not forsake the meeting of believers. The Bible says that. God says that. Do not forsake the meeting of the body. The beast power of Revelation says to forsake the meeting of the body. They're even saying when you can meet again, you can't sing. So who are you going to submit to? The Bible, which says do not forsake the meeting of the assembly, or the second beast power Revelation, which you say is the United States of America, who says close your church and leave liquor stores and abortion clinics open. So you could say politely to the congregation, if you're scared, stay at home. If you're afraid to be within 6 feet of another person, do not enter this business or church. And then it goes on to say, anyone or any government entity that attempts to interfere with our livelihood will be met with a level of resistance necessary to defend our basic human right of survival. God bless America, land of the free, home of the brave. Where is the bravery in God's church? Don't tell me that a country store has more bravery than the people of God and their leaders, right? Now, let's think about that for a second, okay? And let's move on to this next slide. And look at this. I left this up here intentionally. I brought up a story here, and you can read it up here. It says, New York PD dispatches 1,000 cops to start basically a barbecue. People were outside barbecuing on a Saturday, and 1,000 cops were sent to stop people from barbecuing on Saturday. And suddenly, after I had this page open, it won't come open. I refresh it. Oh, it does come open. But for a while there, they were censoring access to this article, which basically says this. It says 1,000 cops to stop New Yorkers from barbecuing on Saturday. There you go. And what about this? How can the virus tell? Anti-racism protests are safe from COVID, but anti-lockdown protests are not safe from COVID, according to health experts. Are these the experts you are trusting, Church of God? Right? And here's something. Here's a video from one of my favorite reporters, Ben Swan, and Luke Radowski out there. A shout to you too. This one's from him. All it says is the data from doctors proves that COVID death rate is very similar to, and it would say, the flu. So let's just click on it and see that link. And, oh my goodness, this video has been removed for violating YouTube's community guidelines. What was that violation? Having a different opinion than the government and the mainstream media, which is controlled by the CIA, which means that YouTube and Google is controlled by the CIA because they will not permit a point of view that contradicts theirs. You see that? Here's an author who had his book banned, you could say burned, on Amazon. A very popular book. This is like a top 10, author, previous, bestsellers and stuff like that. And he wrote a book simply with a different opinion that coronavirus, in his opinion, the numbers are being exaggerated extremely. Death certificates are being forced to say coronavirus. We even have, remember from a previous video, the health director of Illinois saying if someone is on their deathbed in hospice care from cancer and their brother who visited them had the coronavirus, they'll label the cancer patients who was already dying as a COVID death, right? The author just brings these things up. The book was banned for many weeks. There was a huge outcry on the internet, and, Amazon, to save people from boycotting and him becoming slightly less rich, gave in temporarily to the crowd. Here's a coincidence, right? 2 new trailblazing COVID researchers died in the same month. 2 people who are leading people investigating COVID-19, whether it's deadly or like the flu, right? That does kill elderly people, who have an immune system deficiency. They were about to make an important announcement about it, and they both died mysteriously in the same month. What a coincidence. And now take a listen to this about our good friend, Bill Gates.
Well, here's an interesting tie. So Bill Gates, for the longest of times, wanted to have the World Health Organization declare coronavirus a pandemic. And the World Health Organization did not want to do that. So a day after Bill Gates, through his foundation, announced an infusion of $50 million into something called the Therapeutic Accelerator to help fight coronavirus and find a vaccine, much of that money to go toward the World Health Organization. One day after that announcement, the World Health Organization Secretary General came out and declared coronavirus a pandemic.
Unbelievable.
So
Cheryl.
Yeah, it is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So what she just said was, the World Health Organization, you may remember, originally came out and said what these doctors are saying that was banned from YouTube. COVID virus, which in their own 1985 publication is called a common cold, which is less dangerous than the flu. Even this year, in early March of this year, the World Health Organization said it's no big deal. And then the day after, Bill Gates gives the World Health Organization $50 million. They announced there's a pandemic. They completely changed their mind, 180 degrees, one day after Bill Gates gives them $50 million. Oh, my goodness, 2 coincidences back to back. I call that a super coincidence. And Bill Gates, little side note, you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute, says mosquitoes scare him more than sharks, right? So he personally does not want to get bitten by a mosquito. Well, then why is it that the Gates Foundation is genetically modifying mosquitoes to bite people? Interesting. He doesn't want to be bitten by a mosquito, but he's, genetically engineering mosquitoes to bite people. Another hypocrisy from Bill Gates. Trust me, that's just a coincidence. Just like when he said that he'll use, birth control and vaccines to lower the population. Now, if someone doesn't accidentally say, I really think people with green-colored skin are inferior, I don't say, that's not what I meant. I mean, that's a very clear statement, right? And he, an intelligent man, a good speaker, clearly said, word for word, look it up in a past video of mine, he said if we do these things, such as birth control and vaccines, we will lower the population. And remember, Kenyan Doctors Association found sterilization formulas secretly in a tetanus vaccine given only to women during childbirthing age. That was Bill Gates and the World Health Organization who did that. And look at here at clinicaltrials.gov, Second Beast Power United States, right? And you can find a Bible study in this link. Go in the description of this video, go down a bit, and you'll see great Bible studies. And one of those is in there, Why the United States is the Second Beast in Revelation. Study that out. And here it says on a government, website, immunization via mosquito bite is what they're working on, which will also include just a tiny little bit of radiation. Isn't that nice? Doesn't radiation cause cancer? And isn't this a genetically modified mosquito? And they're using them for immunization. Japanese are doing the same thing. They're basically for people who refuse to give a vaccine for religious reasons, for intelligence reasons, they'll just release a bunch of mosquitoes. So when you go out, you're bitten by a vaccine in the saliva of a mosquito, which has been genetically modified after Bill Gates says he's afraid of mosquitoes, but he's going to make GM mosquitoes anyway, right? And now, what a coincidence. Oh my gosh, there's so many coincidences going on. The EPA suspends enforcement of environmental laws because of the coronavirus, which means these genetically modified mosquitoes don't have to be approved by the EPA, which had very low standards to begin with. And then let's take a look at this one. It says genetically modified mosquitoes are about to be released in Florida and Texas. Oh my gosh, another coincidence. Can you believe it? Just so many coincidences, so little time. Let's take a look at what GMOs are about, and what a coincidence. It's actually in the Bible. GMOs are in the Bible, and God says not to do it. You shall keep my statutes. You shall not let your livestock breed with one another. You shall not sow your field with mixed seed. Now, why is that? Why does God say that? Why does God say eating swine's flesh is an abomination? Because it's bad for you. They are bottom feeders like shrimp, like catfish, like shark, that eat corpses that are dead for months. And if you eat them, you're eating the contaminants in their stomach. Also, a pig has a digestive tract so short that its feces, before it comes out, its poop, its manure, is absorbed into its flesh. Do you see that? So if you eat pork, you're eating pork manure. Is that a good thing or not? That's why God calls it an abomination. That's why he says don't crossbreed species. You'll run into a problem. Well, what problem do you run into when you do that anyway? Right? It says right here you can take a horse and a donkey and have a mule against God's command. But they cannot have babies on their own. They are sterile because they cannot make sperm or eggs. So when you disobey God, he built it into the DNA that that's the last time. It will not go on from here. That frankenfish or whatever you're making, you can make it once, but it won't reproduce. It's sterile. The same is true with GMO combinations, the offspring, the seeds, the mammals that are GMO. They are sterile. God is telling us something. GMOs, don't do it. It's not healthy. You know, another coincidence is that when people have, quote, alien abductions, what do they take from people? They take their sperm and their eggs. It sounds like maybe somebody who's sterile is trying to reproduce themselves. Is that fallen angels or something like that? Everyone believes in Star Trek and all that. If an alien was really a fallen angel, they're certainly not going to tell the truth because their father is Satan, the father of lies. And if they tell them who they really are, that means God is true, the Bible is true, and heck, that might scare the world into repenting. So they make up this excuse they're from outer space and whatnot, and there'll be a link to this article in the description of the video. Here it says about, let me go to the title first here. It says Frankenfish on the menu, right? That's what it's called. And it says, genetically modified Atlantic salmon, known by critics as Frankenfish, may soon be available in your local grocer's seafood aisle. The Food and Drug Administration has given initial approval to biotech developers of the salmon, clearing, and this is an old article, it's been approved, it's in the stores. The last big hurdle before consumers can purchase the fish. Big hurdle? Really? But consumers won't know if the salmon they're buying is genetically engineered or not, because regulations don't require food made from a genetically modified organism to be labeled GMO. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but Congress passed barely, or talked about it, a food labeling regulation requiring all of the food that we swallow, taking something that comes from who knows where and swallowing it. That's probably one of the most dangerous things a person does on a daily basis. And all that the population wanted, just a small group of the American population, 90%, wanted, please tell us if we're swallowing a genetically modified food that God said not to eat, that makes, when you do it, the offspring sterile, that has clean and unclean things together, because salmon is clean according to God's word, and an eel is not. So they're forcing us to eat an unclean food. What a coincidence. In fact, I called up the Food and Drug Administration one time, and I was buying cheese. And someone in my church in New Health said, a lot of cheeses have pork in them. I said, no, they don't. He said, yeah, they do. It's called enzymes. So sure enough, I look at cheese. It says enzymes on the bottom. It doesn't tell you what kind of enzyme. There's plant enzyme, there's beef enzyme, and there's pork enzyme. I called up the FDA and said, how come you're not telling people that they're eating pork in case they're Jewish or Muslim or Sabbath keepers? They hung up on me. Okay? That's what's going on here. And so this president that we had at the time vetoed putting a GMO label on food. They vetoed it. They claimed for 8 years and claimed when they were running for office that, I'm not going to tell you who it is, go figure it out and see who voted from the House of Representatives and the Senate. Who voted against it? Those are people you can't trust. You want to know which politician you can trust? They insist on GMO labeling. You know the ones you can't trust? The ones who vote against it. Cut and dry. I've never seen an issue more cut and dry to figure out whether the politician is honest or not. So the president at the time vetoed it. 90% of Americans wanted a label that said genetically modified, and the president said, no, I'm going to go with the corporations. How about that? I thought this was a democracy. I thought the majority wins. I thought these people were representing the common man. I guess that's just must have been a coincidence. And now it says we're going to have immunity passports in order to speed up the return to work. And this article, which I'll link, is from The Guardian. And it's a very positive article about how immunity passports are great. But you may have to have them or you cannot get a job. Oh, and just one other thing. You may have to have them in order to ever travel again. Oh, and you may have to have them in order to enter a public building. Oh, and you may have to have them in order to enter a restaurant. You see where this is going? And you know how you qualify for an immunity passport? You guessed it. You get a vaccine, right? Oh my goodness. What a world we are going to. Now, next week, I'm going to be talking about the riots going on and how that is not necessarily contrived like the coronavirus. However, it's being blown, not exactly blown out of proportion, but it's the emotions of people are being stirred by the CIA controlled media. And there have been all sorts of things that are suspect that are going on there. It's part of this bringing in martial law for some big event coming down the pike that they want to train us. Just like you train a dog. They're training us to get used to lockdown. But it's not martial law. It's just a quarantine of the healthy people. Okay? If that makes sense to you, then I don't know what to say. This has been Brother Bart, and thank you, by the way, to my monthly contributors who go to that link directly under this video and show their support with a one-time donation or those monthly donations. I greatly appreciate. YouTube has taken so many people's ad revenue away, and now just, banning, deleting, videos that just have a contrary opinion to what's going on, especially if they have a large following. Be sure to follow my website, Sibrel.com, which in a short while will be the new place for Conspiracy Corner News. Everyone, God bless, and be happy and not worry.